Good evening, America. Welcome to the Monday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from the nation's capital and our wiredtofishcoffee.com studios. Wired to Fish Coffee, as you know, is the official coffee of the Solomon family and Just the News. And you can go right now to wiredtofishcoffee.com and get a fantastic 20% discount on their smooth tasting coffees or other items like the tumblers and mugs with the Just the News brand on that. Go check them out. They also got some brand new Christmas decorations, which would make some nice stocking stuffers. Use the promo code Just News. You're going to get 20% off during the month of December. All right. It was a busy holiday weekend. Yes, we had some turkey. Yes, we had some football. But Donald Trump didn't slow down. He continues to fill out his administration and its top posts, including naming Kash Patel, a frequent guest on this show, to be the next FBI director. Now, the current FBI director still has to resign, or President Trump has to fire him after he takes over January 20th. That's Chris Wray, of course. But Donald Trump's already looking past that moment in naming Kash Patel to be the next FBI director. And oh my God, the second that announcement came out, the legacy media and Democrats all across this country lost their potatoes. I mean, they were throwing all sorts of warnings that the world was coming to an end, that the FBI would be weaponized against journalists. Now, that's kind of funny, right? Let's think about this for a second. It was the Obama administration that went after Fox News journalist James Rosen with a subpoena. It was the Biden administration who went after a Guardian reporter's phone records. Wait a second, those were Democrat administrations, not Donald Trump, not Kash Patel. But the warnings and the really all of the threats and the sky is falling rhetoric filled up news all across the country today, except for the fact that most people didn't want to talk about the most important thing you look at with an FBI director, the record. And on the record, Kash Patel has extraordinary experience. He was a federal public defender. He worked on the defense side of cases, and he was a federal prosecutor, not just any federal prosecutor, one of the country's most successful national security prosecutors. In fact, so successful that the CIA and the Justice Department both gave him some of their highest awards for works he did convicting terrorists in Africa. He then went on to be at the National Security Council as counterterrorism director, where he helped oversee the strike against the Iranian general Soleimani, a major terrorist who was taken off the planet by that drone strike ordered by Donald Trump, supervised by Kash Patel. He was also chief of staff at the Pentagon, chief of staff at the director of national intelligence. And when he was in his free time, he also was the chief counsel who helped unravel the Russia collusion false narrative of the FBI when he was at the House Intelligence Committee working for Devin Nunes. And that's quite a bio for a guy who's only 44 years old. And today, I started to call around, started to talk to FBI men and women on the front lines. I found a lot of support for Kash Patel in the rank and file. How much support? Well, Jeff Danik, perhaps one of the most respected former FBI retirees, a former supervisory special agent in Miami, someone that agents all across the country consult, look for advice. He's a counselor. He does all sorts of amazing things. He said large numbers of FBI agents are going to support Kash Patel as the next FBI director. Why? Because they subscribe to his philosophy that what's wrong with the FBI is the small group of 250 people at the top leadership of the food chain who have politicized investigations that should have just stuck to evidence and facts. That promise that Kash Patel has made to clean out the FBI leadership, he calls it a house cleaning, and put people in charge who will focus on the law and evidence, has won the respect of agents already, according to Jeff Danik. You can check out his comments to me. They're on my podcast at John Solomon Reports. A really important moment in this debate about whether Kash Patel will be the next FBI director. Now, lots of other news going on. I'm sure you caught this last night. I certainly did. I was writing about it on Just the News. President Joe Biden, who said he was never going to pardon his son Hunter, well, he pardoned his son Hunter. You know that by now. It's the latest in a long set of lies that Joe Biden has perpetrated about the family business. Remember back in 2019 and 2020, Joe Biden said, my family to get money from China. I never met with my son's business partners, and my son's laptop was Russian disinformation. None of those statements were true, and nor was his promise that he wouldn't pardon his son. He did it last night. The world's still reacting to that. A lot of fallout, including several Democrats running from the president saying it was the wrong thing to do. We're going to tackle that later on in the show. But first, I want to get back to our first topic of the night, the FBI, the opportunity for potential generational change atop the FBI. We're being joined now by one of the FBI's most famous whistleblowers. He's also the host of a great podcast called American Radicals. You can watch it on Rumble. He's our good friend, Steve Friend. Steve, great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me today.
So I want to start off with the decision by Donald Trump, even before Chris Wray is gone, to announce Kash Patel as the next director. Your thoughts on Kash and what he may bring to the job, whether agents will follow him?
Well, I think that Kash is eminently qualified to take the helm at the FBI. And you listed off his qualifications, his bona fides, and one that you actually overlooked was the foundation that he runs, the Fight with Kash Foundation, which I had some experience with, where Kash Patel reached out to me. Actually, he did some investigating and tracked down my number and reached out to me privately and came to my support, my family's support in our time of need, and did not expect anything, did not expect any publicity. I think that shows the measure of the man with that case. But as it comes to the actual running the day-to-day operations of the FBI, the fact that Kash Patel comes from the defense side and from the prosecutor side, I think is to his enormous credit. He sees how the process can become the punishment. The fact that he did work on the Russia investigation and saw how weaponized the FBI had become and exposed it. And the fact that he's transparent about where he stands on things is just a nice, refreshing element to him. Whereas we had James Comey, who just couldn't be questioned because he was just so nonpartisan. Meanwhile, he ran a honeypot operation off the books in the Donald Trump campaign and sent agents to go in and trap Mike Flynn. And you have Christopher Wray, again, supposed to be nonpartisan. Meanwhile, he's heading an organization that censored the Hunter Biden laptop story and put 90-year-old concentration camp survivors who were protesting outside of an abortion clinic in federal prison. This is not a nonpartisan organization. We need a paradigm shift, and I think Kash Patel is the man to do it.
You and I have talked in the past, the gulf between the frontline agents like yourself that go out and solve crimes, follow the book, do good work, do heroic work most days, and then the leadership that often occupies the seventh floor, which often is more interested in paying homage to political masters in Washington. That divide seems to have gotten bigger in the last 5 or 6 years. There's always been the headquarters and field divide, but the politicization of the top of the FBI, how does that get to reverse? Do you agree with Kash that maybe a wholesale change of leadership is probably what's needed?
Without question, wholesale leadership changes all the way down, all senior executives, including the special agents in charge of all the 55 field offices. They're all compromised at this time. They've all participated in this scheme, this integrated program management quota system scheme, and personally enriched themselves to the tune of $30,000 to $50,000 a year because they pressured their subordinates to get the right number of arrests and they're open the right number of cases and use just the specific amount of tools that they had to be used. And that also includes some in the rank and file. Look, the FBI has bought in lock, stock, and barrel to the 30 by 30 initiative, all the DEI hiring practices, where they're getting people who are just not capable of doing the job, and they know it. And they're compromised because of that. They're willing to just follow orders. There needs to be a reassessment, a revetting of just about everyone. If you're not willing to swear the oath and actually take it seriously, follow the training that says if you see the FBI is off the rails, you have to throw the flag. And your only interest is in the process, not the outcome. You gather the facts, you present them, and then they have their day at court. That in itself is the victory for a law enforcement agency. They shouldn't be putting the thumb on the scales of justice, or in the case of the FBI, their entire arm to get the outcomes that they want, to get their political narrative about domestic terrorism being on the rise around the country, when it in fact is not.
Yeah, that's a big part of what you help expose, the misuse of tactical teams to hire people on misdemeanor charges. That's something that seems dangerous in and of itself. And then sort of the weaponization of the law, which now the courts have agreed about on January 6 protesters. Tell us a little bit about what you learned about FBI leadership and the culture they've instilled in the last few years that makes it hard for agents like yourself to just go out and do your job.
Well, the directives that come down from Washington, D.C. seem to be unquestionable. You can't do anything out. You can't think outside the box. The pressure that is on you on a daily basis to give them a stat a day to keep your assistant special agent in charge away. That's the motto. That's the mantra that's constantly repeated. The pressure is constant. You have to open up these right number of cases. You have to use the tools, even if they're wholly inappropriate. You have to get the right number of arrests. And you have to structure it in a way that is just antithetical to law enforcement. I mean, look, I was told and given directives to delay indicting people who had committed crimes because we'd already hit our quota for the year. So let's delay that indictment, Steve, until next year. This is a culture, a rotten culture, that's infiltrated all 55 field offices at this point. It has to be done away with. And we have to get to people who are not afraid to question to actually use their ability to think through issues and use common sense and use their integrity to say, hey, look, I have a question, I have a reasonable concern, and I need to be able to bring that to my boss without fear of retribution, of losing my livelihood like a few of us did and still sitting on the outside more than 2 years later.
Yeah, it's extraordinary what we've learned. There are some troubling things that whistleblowers like yourself have brought to light. The fact that background checks were predicated sometimes on whether someone was a Trump supporter or a Second Amendment supporter. By the way, neither of those things have anything to do with security. They have to do with politics. The misuse of tactical teams, things like that. What do the rank and file members of the FBI think has gone on? I mean, when they look at their bosses, you said something really profound. A lot of times they're looking for a way not to engage with leadership, right?
Yes, it's sort of seen as this viper's nest, and you can be strategic in your dealings with it. Just give them a little bit so that they stay off your back. But there needs to be an accounting, a personal accounting, I think, that needs to go through everyone. You swear an oath. You're supposed to uphold the Constitution. You're supposed to follow your training. You're supposed to actually look at your job as an opportunity to protect your fellow countrymen against fraud and force. It's not a way to get a really comfortable job that you can be the most interesting person in every single social atmosphere that you're in. It's not an opportunity to have a pension. This is an opportunity to actually do what is you're charged to do, and that is to protect the country against terrorists, against violent criminals, against fraudsters. And that's just gone away. It's no longer that way. And people just are kind of keeping their head down and waiting to see how things play out. And for people who are supposed to be vetted as having a high level of integrity and having candor and bravery, that just doesn't pass muster at this point.
Yeah, it's actually really stunning. I hear that from so many agents on a daily basis. Steve, you mentioned the bonus system and how it reinforces bad behavior. Could you tell people a little more about that, about quotas and bonuses and how it's used to conform behavior, even if it doesn't conform with the law?
Well, this is the prime reason that I came forward. This is called Integrated Program Management, IPM. It's a quota system. All 55 field offices every year, they pretend like they're a widget making company, and they budget the types of crime that they see over the horizon. They budget the number of arrests that they have to have, the intelligence products that they have to author, and the tools that they have to use, the cases they have to open. And it's all tied to the special agent in charge, the chief agent for each field office, to their bonus compensation package. If you meet that metric, then that individual is going to get $30,000 to $50,000. And the problem philosophically with that is that it turns law enforcement on its head, because the sheriff gets elected in a county to bring the crime down. If he doesn't do that, he loses his job. But now the FBI is reversing it. They're incentivized to bring the numbers up, because they can then go to Congress and say, look at all the good work that we're doing. You gave us $12 billion last year. Why don't you give us 13 or 14 billion? And on top of that, why don't you give us a brand new headquarters building that's double the size of the Pentagon? And that's not what law enforcement is about.
Yeah, you did such a great job helping us understand just how perverse that dynamic was. One last question for you. There were a lot of IRS and FBI agents that worked the Hunter Biden case to secure a conviction in Delaware on gun charges, to secure a guilty plea on tax charges in California. Your thoughts on Joe Biden pardoning his son after saying he wouldn't do it?
Well, the lawman aspect of me is disappointed, because I think a lot of good work went into that, and they tried their best to follow the process as they should have done. But then the political angle of it, I think this is an opportunity. The toothpaste is out of the tube on this. There needs to be mutually assured destruction, this asymmetrical battle between the left and the right. Let's bring it back to balance. Now Donald Trump has an opportunity. He has the chance to pardon January 6ers, who the process was a violation of them. It was the punishment. And on top of that, he should probably consider preemptively pardoning his political appointees for their entire tenure, so that they can go into office and actually do the job we're expecting them to do without fear of retribution of a future administration.
Yeah, those are two big ideas that I have a funny feeling are going to get discussed a lot when President Trump takes over on January 20th. Steve, as always, it's a great honor to have you on. Your whistleblowing was essential to the nation's future, and your podcast is a must listen to. Folks, go watch The American Radicals on Rumble. What a great show. Great always to have my good friend Steve Friend on. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Congressman Louis Gohmert, he always has a lot to say about what goes on in Washington, usually insightful, always funny. He's going to tell us a little bit about what he thinks about President Biden's pardon of his son after these messages. Hey folks, the last few years are a terrifying reminder that the next medical crisis is just around the corner. Whether it's in the form of a natural disaster like a hurricane, tornado, flood, or earthquake, or whether it's a globalist launch, pandemic, or something much more mundane like a tick bite, you and your family need to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. Dr. Peter McCullough and the medical professionals at the Wellness Company created a line of prescription medical kits that are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. I rely on them. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. Rest assured knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, orals, parasitics on hand to help keep you and your family safe for whatever happens. Go to twc.health/justnews today and order. That's twchealth/justnews and use the promo code